It's a pleasure to have you on. Do you want to start really quick intro, who you are, what you do, and we can get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Haseeb, managing partner of Dragonfly. We're a multi-billion-dollar crypto venture fund. I'm sorry, I'm recovering from a little sickness. It's a good day. Yeah, we manage about $4 billion in assets. We're one of the biggest funds in the space, early investors in a lot of stuff. Monad being one of them. I see. I know your team Monad from back in the day. But we're early investors across the space. Things like Athena, Mega ETH, early seed investor in Avalanche, Dune Analytics, Bybit, across the space, up and down. We've been there from day one with a lot of founders. So that's what I do.
Yeah, Dragonfly's awesome. Also, thanks for getting me involved with that debate. It was awesome. It was a little, I know,
dude, it was fun.
It was a little clunky figuring it out for the first time.
It was janky as fuck. It was janky as fuck, but it was good. It was the first draft. You know.
You did great, by the way. Do you do a lot of those debates? Like, have you done that before?
So I actually did a debate. So I'm a very argumentative person. I just I can't not get in there. So when I was at the debate, I was the moderator, and I was just oh my God, let me get in there. Like, I feel like I could do this better than the guys on stage. But we decided that it wouldn't be a good look for me to be doing the debate, because it's kind of like you want the pro side, the con side. I don't really have a dog in the fight. But I did a debate before, actually very apropos of today. I did a debate before. It was like a closed door event at the Dragonfly office in New York. This was must have been March, whenever it was that Ethereum was just absolute rock bottom. It must have been 1800. And I did a debate with David from Bankless. And I invited him that I was going to take the anti side, that the debate topic was going to be, is Ethereum cooked?
Okay.
And that was peak, just, people were just hopeless. It was blood in the streets. And I was okay, I'm going to take the Ethereum is cooked side. And obviously he's Bankless, so he's going to take the pro Ethereum side. And he last minute was like, hey, see, can we switch sides? Can you take the pro Ethereum side? And I'm going to take the anti Ethereum. And I'm like, what, dude, how can you be the anti Ethereum? You're fucking Mr. Bankless. And so he took the anti Ethereum, and I was like, fine, look, I'll beat you either way. I don't care what side I'm on. And so I won that debate. And one of the arguments I made in the debate is that, look, if the Bankless guy is swapping sides in the debate, that's how you know it's the bottom. From here, there's only one direction, which is up, which I think that was actually literally exactly the bottom was 1800.
That's unreal. Also, I got a chance to listen to I'm a big Gwart fan, and I didn't listen to part 2.
Yeah, that's right.
But I listened to part 1, and it was a movie. Part 1 was that was a fun. You don't get a lot of that, these intellectual debates from people that are actually in the culture as well. I'm happy you did that, by the way. That was a really good one.
Look, here's the thing. I don't like to get into Twitter fights. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I know you're obviously out there every day. But I really try not to get into fights, because it stresses me out. I feel like I can't go to sleep without thinking about it, and then it's just not good for my life to be getting into beef with people. So normally I just if somebody's just being a total asshole, I just block, move on. I'm cool, I'm not going to argue with you. You're welcome to your opinion. But with Gwart, I was just man, you're just it was the time when everybody was dunking on investors. Everybody was like, investors fucking suck. You guys are just purely extractive. Nothing valuable has ever been built in the space. And Gwart is one of these guys. Look, I love Gwart. I've known him for a long time. He's a good guy, but he's such a shit talker. And oftentimes it's hilarious. He's like the fucking Mark Twain of crypto, which I love. I appreciate that about him. But there are times when he's joking Gwart, and there are times when it's okay, there's no joke. He's just coming at people that he doesn't know that much about venture. You could tell from that debate he didn't know that much. He sort of knew enough to argue with me, but there's a lot of stuff that he just doesn't understand about how the investing world works. And so I was just man, fucking all right. If you really think that, then all right, bring the receipts. Let's talk about this. If you think investors can't make any money, which is basically what he was arguing, is investors are just vaporizing their LPs' money. And I was like, all right, if you really believe that, let's go fucking debate it. And so, look, I'm not as funny as he is. I can't compete tweet for tweet, but you want to throw down and we go point for point, I can stand my ground.
He's ruthless. I was DMing him when I was listening to it, and I don't know him super well. We go back and forth sometimes, and you made some comment in the middle. You cut him off, and you said, something along the lines of like, wow, it's obvious I'm winning this. And I was cracking up and I was like, I said, Gort, you have to say it in the next one. And I think he said it in the next one. It was a classic.
Okay,
yeah, I think he said it in the
yeah.
next one. I said, whether you're winning or not, you have to say it back. Can you explain to me this cycle that CT goes through where we hate VCs and they're the scum of the earth, and then we love VCs and we need them and they're so important? Like, why is this like a cycle that goes on?
That's a good question. I mean, I remember when I first came into the space in 2018, that was like the ICO boom. And in the ICO boom, there wasn't the same level of like thinking of VCs as these extractive demand type people, because everybody was getting in, right? Retail was getting in. There were these syndicates. Everybody was able to get access to ICOs at that time. And so I remember at that time, it was kind of like VCs people didn't think about it that much. Like VCs were kind of a signal. They're like, oh, okay, A16Z is in this, Polychain's in this, Pantera's in this. But they weren't like a person that you spent time thinking about.
Yeah.
So it really was like in 2021, so that was the COVID boom. The COVID boom, people fucking loved VCs. And I didn't really think about it. I wasn't like sitting around like, oh, why do people love us so much? But VCs were like, oh, it's so great. Look, A16Z is investing money in the space. Like that's going to make coins go up. And I think the perception was that, okay, capital coming into the space is good for the industry because that's investment, it's money in the ground, it's more validation. It means that like more products will get built. And people at the time perceived that these products are going to result in adoption, right? Because that's the obvious, like why else would you be funding startups if not to get more users? So everybody thought, I remember when A16Z announced a $2.5 billion fund, right? That moment in like 21, 22, whenever it was, I remember it was huge news, industry-wide, biggest venture fund in history in crypto. Like we made it, coins went up, like, it was jubilation. And if you just cut to like a year and a half later, I remember like a big fund being announced, people were just like, fuck you, like, oh, you're just gonna extract, you're gonna be dumping tokens on us, like this is terrible for the market. And so where did this come from? Why did this change? I don't think there's a simple answer to the story. One very obvious answer is that most people stop believing that startups actually create value, which is interesting, right? I mean, like part of what led to the meme coin culture started with this financial nihilism stuff that really started in like 23, right? After the collapse of FTX is when this meme of financial nihilism really started taking off. And the idea, I remember it was, who's the guy from Ikigai? Travis. I remember Travis being like, the guy who first articulated this the most clearly, which is that, look, we don't really believe in any of this stuff anymore. Like, yeah, the coins are there and we hope the coins go up, but we don't hope they go up because people will actually use them. We hope they go up because some other idiot is going to buy it after us. And whoever that idiot is, it's definitely not you, because you're a VC, you're investing in the next thing that's going to be another narrative to dump on somebody else. And like, none of this stuff is actually going to be valuable. None of this stuff is actually going to make anything that anyone's ever going to find useful. And this belief kind of metastasized in crypto Twitter and on the online communities. And who is the primary villain in this story? It's VCs, right? VCs are the people who are just continuing this cycle of violence. And the thing is, like, look, I've been a VC for a long time. I don't just invest in tokens. I invest in equity businesses too. Like, to me, it's all the same. It's entrepreneurs who see a problem and they try to go solve it. And for Dragonfly, we've never really cared whether a project is a venture investment an equity investment or a token investment, right? So we invest in the seed round of like Dune Analytics. We invest in the Series A of Bybit, right? We're early investors in a lot of stuff that's just like, Hidden Road, which is like a big prime broker. We invest in a lot of just ordinary businesses, right? And nobody ever argues like, oh my God, you're dumping on retail when the company goes in IPOs, right? But like that's literally true for every VC in every category, all forms of funding. Of course, they eventually sell. Everybody eventually sells. Even somebody who's buying an ICO eventually sells. But so this idea, I think, really came from this financial nihilism stuff, right? I think that's now finally starting to go away, because we're starting to see, okay, stablecoins are actually working. We can see that like the amount of demand that's on chain is not just like the cyclical thing. It's just like continuing to happen. One of their biggest investments in our last fund is Athena. Athena makes real fucking money. Like this is not a like, oh, this is a Ponzi scheme that's being dumped on other people. This thing is making really serious revenue on chain. And it's now the third biggest stablecoin, stablecoin, but synthetic dollar in existence, right? Like this stuff is now beyond just, okay, CT kind of washing machine. This is a much bigger story, and I feel like people are starting to accept that.
I think Guy is gonna come on next week.
They still hate VCs though.
Yeah. I think Guy's gonna come on next week, which is awesome. This did start post FTX really in crypto. I have a question. Do you think that there is go broader than crypto, a culture-wide shift to nihilism, especially in the West? I think Basic Scene Z made this tweet the other day, and it was, I prayed it was a copy pasta. It wasn't, and he was just talking about how, people used to sell dreams and they believed what they were selling, and he's just talking about how the president, the Trump family is launching scams and launching meme coins, and that Microsoft is in their earning calls saying it should be $1,000 a share and they're selling for $350, and he just gave like a bunch of examples about how it feels like there's people don't believe the story like they used to believe it, and I wonder, like, do you see a broad shift, even if a little bit, towards like cultural nihilism in the West?
So I think there is definitely some of that. Here's the thing. My instinct is always it's like the argumentative side of me is always to like try to find the way in which like it's not quite so simple. Like there are a lot of things, like, one thing that we know is that people are continuing to get richer in the US. And the story in the US is that, millennials are really poor and Gen Z is even poorer and Gen Alpha is just totally fucked. And there are certain things upon which that's true, right? Things like fertility and home ownership and all this other stuff. Like, yeah, it's absolutely correct. But like, I was reading some tweet of somebody talking about like how great it was in the 70s. And they were just like, yeah, in the 70s, people in their 30s were like, they were married and they had 2 kids and they had a house and, everything was great. And it's like, okay, would you actually want to go back to the 70s? Like, do you know what the 70s was like? Like, do you know how much it sucked to not have technology, to not have like the leisure time that we have today, to not have like just the extent of how easy it is to, to have a car, to have a TV, to have like all, like, how many people in the 70s, yeah, they might have had a house, they didn't have a fucking television. They were basically just not at the level of choice that we have, that they were like a woman at a home in the 1970s was still having to cook and clean and like wash clothes and whatever, because like all these technologies were not as uniform and as easy to access as they are today. Now, look, does that fundamentally make people happy to have a fucking, a microwave and a TV and all this stuff? I don't know that it actually does, but do they choose this? Right? Like, are there people who actually choose to go, like, if you want to go live in the 1970s, go to Italy, right? You can just move there. It's not that hard if you're an American to go move to Italy. Italy is basically like living in the 70s. And not that many people choose that.
I like that take. There is always 2 sides of the coin, and they didn't have an Axiom trading terminal in the 70s, so what the fuck would you do all day?
Exactly. So see, clearly we are an embarrassment of riches.
Why do you think the shift is happening back to real businesses in crypto, especially what we're seeing with this revenue meta that gets thrown around all the time? Like, when did this shift happen, and why do you think it's happening?
Yeah, so I think the revenue meta, quote unquote, has already unshifted, because what's the revenue for Ethereum, right? Like, let me just look at what's happening in the price action. So I think in a way the revenue meta is I posted about this a little while back and I got roasted for it, because during the time of the quote unquote revenue meta, everybody was like, well, obviously revenue is just the thing forever, and like it's over now, and we're never going back to speculation or just raw kind of energy around particular assets. And it's extremely common in financial markets that when markets are down and when people are risk averse and there's not that just animal spirits in a market, that you just look for earnings. All you care about is earnings, and everything trades on multiples, and that's it. And I don't want to hear a fucking story about where you're growing or how much you're going to grow or how big the future is. If I don't fundamentally believe in a future, then I'm going to discount that future and just value in earnings, right? And that's basically where crypto was at, more or less. We're now in a place where people are talking about, the whole world is going to be using stablecoins, and fucking Scott Bessent is tweeting that stablecoins are going to hit 3.7 trillion at the end of the decade, right? He's saying that we're going to be 15% of the money supply in 4 years, right? That's the Treasury Secretary saying that. So like, once everybody's all bulled up about the future, then all of a sudden we're not worried so much about the present, we're worried about growth. And it's the same thing that you see, all these AI companies are burning money, right? Nobody's making money except maybe NVIDIA. NVIDIA's making money. Everybody else is just burning money, just lighting money on fire. And everybody's like, yes, keep going. This is awesome. Please keep doing that. And the reason why is because they believe in the growth story. So if you believe in the growth story, then you don't care so much about revenue today. You care about growth. You care about what you can eventually become. And if you believe the Tom Lee story that Ethereum can become the stablecoin chain for the entire world, for all of that 3.7 trillion that Besson is talking about, then you're going to say, look, I don't care how much fees you're making today. I care about what that future looks like. But if you don't believe in that future, then yeah, of course, all you're going to care about is revenue.
This is a little bit off topic, but has there just been this macro shift in the mass gold rush of AI hiring that just happened? Like, what happened with Meta? All of a sudden they just stopped what they're doing. Like, what happened? I think it came out of nowhere.
I don't know that they stopped what they're doing. I mean, Meta's trying to dispute all the stuff that's going on. And there was another story, I think just today or yesterday, about, I think it was Apple, somebody very senior at Apple AI who got poached by Meta. So I think Meta's still out there. If anything, it's honestly kind of weird that senior AI talent wasn't getting sports celebrity type pay packages. Because if you just think about it, right? Like, I mean, right now, what the markets are telling you is that this is literally the most valuable thing in the world, right? I mean, NVIDIA went from like almost nothing, a few $100 billion to being the most valuable company in the world, right? Multiple trillions of dollars of value created in just a couple of years. Like any sports team, there's a few people who ultimately are responsible for creating that value. Not that literally they're doing all the work, but that they're the people who coalesce a team around them and drive in the right direction. Right. So if all this enterprise value is getting created around AI, kind of makes sense that like some of these guys on the AI teams probably should be making more than the CEO, because if they're adding more value to the underlying market cap, why shouldn't they be compensated for that? It's like, okay, you get 50% of the market cap that gets added and the company gets 50%. That's a pretty good deal.
That's actually a sick take. I fuck with that. It makes sense. Like, honestly, yeah, it is the most valuable. Society's saying it's the most valuable thing in the world. So is the market. Obviously, you would catch up. Your AI lead is maybe equal to LeBron James for the Lakers. Like, makes sense.
Why shouldn't it be?
To build super intelligence. Yeah, like to build the death robot makes sense. Dude, you guys have been absolutely crushing it with the podcast. By the way, I don't listen to a ton of CryptoPods. Your show is really good. I was listening to the episode the other day. The intro is very focused on the Roman Storm story, which is a pretty rough, kind of brutal situation. But the podcasts are awesome, and I think you just released the Flat episode from Robinhood. Is that you just released it today?
Yeah, we just released it like about an hour ago.
How was that?
So I want to see what people say when they see it. Here's the thing: I don't like interviewing public company guys.
Why is that?
If you're a public company CEO, you're very, very careful about what you say. You've been media trained. You give very scripted answers, and it's hard. It's really hard to like get a real take out of that guy, especially when we're talking about his fucking business.
Yeah.
Because like we're not just gonna shoot the shit about random stuff with Vlad. So it's like, okay, we're gonna ask you about Robinhood and tokenized stocks and whatever, and you just like when you're running a $100 billion company, like your job is to just never miss. Your job is to just like always be on point because everyone's coming at you all the time. And so I respect it. I have a ton of respect for Vlad, but it's just like, it's like Jeremy Allaire, same thing. Like I love Jeremy, grabbing dinner with him and hanging out is awesome. So I get such interesting perspective from him of just how he's built Circle over the years. But if I get him on a podcast, he will just say nothing. You cannot get him to say anything meaningful about the business because it's a public company. And like it's very, very tightly controlled what he can and can't say. So that's the difficulty for me. That maybe people still find it really nice. But when I mean, like running a show, you just you learn what makes for the best content and like how you can actually get people to like show you those moments of vulnerability or showing you something real that they haven't shown to somebody else. Like that's the best moments when you're running a show, and it's hard to get that when you're interviewing a CEO.
It makes sense. Are you? But the whole time you're trying, right? Like you're digging and you're trying to get in,
totally
but he's not fucking.
I'm sure. Get in there. He's not
it makes sense.
No. Look, it's great to have competition. We're all out there trying to be. Oh, come on, fucking talk some shit about Coinbase, please.
Yeah, I want everyone to win. Let me ask you this: how impactful do you think Robinhood's entrance into crypto, and especially on chain, is going to be?
Yeah. Well, so they've already had a huge impact on crypto. You see it now. Crypto's like bigger than their equities business, which is crazy to see. So what impact are they going to have on chain? I mean, it's a little too early to say. Even with all of these things, like with Circle, with Stripe, them doing their own chains, it's too early to say what exactly is going to be the go-to-market, right? If you look at Base, Base is the perfect example of how you create the maximum amount of value, which is you create a chain that, yeah, it's a corporate chain, but it's totally open, it's credibly neutral, and they really do the work to make sure that everybody believes that, like, look, if you're Circle, if you're Stripe, if you're somebody else and you want to launch something on Base, I don't think you're worried. I don't think you're thinking like, oh man, they're gonna fuck us, they're gonna like block us on the RPCs, they're gonna like do. I don't think anybody is worried that Base is not actually truly credibly neutral, right? Despite the fact that it's run by Coinbase. Is that true for Robinhood? Is that true for Stripe? Is that true for Circle? I don't know. I think it's too early for them to have proven that. And that is really the differentiator, right? Like, I don't think OKX feels like BNB chain is neutral. I don't think they would ever launch an application on BNB chain, you know, and vice versa. I don't think Binance would ever say, yeah, let's just launch something on OKX chain. It's probably gonna be fine. I think they would assume there'd be all sorts of fuckery if they were to launch anything there. But I don't think anybody thinks that about Base, and that is kind of a miracle. It's like really hard to get that level of trust.
Why?
So that's what I'd want to see Robinhood do, but I think it's hard. I think it's very, very hard.
So why don't these companies just come and build on top of Base?
I think they correctly realize that. Like, look, I mean, that's kind of this guy's ecosystem. Like, there's a lot of flow-through effects of, you know, everything on Base benefits if Robinhood goes and moves their stuff there. And Robinhood's like, look, I want to internalize the value that I create. I don't want someone else to capture it. Even if Base is a good ecosystem, like, it's better for me to, rather than have a guarantee of like, okay, I'll have a valuable ecosystem, I'll have a valuable product and get some cost savings if I go build myself on Base. If I build it on my own chain, there's at least a shot that I can become the next Base.
Yeah.
And every company that's sufficiently big sees that. Now, if you're like not crypto enough, I think you're going to realize that, look, there's no point in me trying to build my own chain. I can barely, integrate a blockchain, much less build my own. But these guys, I mean, they're kind of the big three, right? Of like Circle, Stripe, and Robinhood. They're like the three big fintechs in the space. They're the three smartest. Yeah. So I understand why the three of them are competing to try to build their own.
You know, I had John Carbano on the stream yesterday, and he gave me this perspective that I hadn't really internalized or considered. And he basically was saying that, when Stripe comes out and announces what they're building in crypto, everyone gets really excited because they assume baseline that Stripe capital is just going to pump our bags and our coins and our money, and it's going to flow through the ecosystem. But there's absolutely nothing that says that the new institutions that are coming in are going to like play our games, buy our coins, play by our rules. I think a really micro niche example of this is if you think back to 2024, or I guess beginning of 25 on-chain season, Trump launches a coin. All these new people come on chain and they're trading memes, and everyone had their idea of what retail was going to buy, but they just showed up, made their own influencers, launched their own coins, posted their own metas on TikTok. It didn't give a fuck about what anyone had to do or say or believe in crypto. And it's the same idea as new coin good, old coin bad. Like, what's to say that these institutions coming in and putting big resources behind crypto activations is going to actually trickle down to our coins, to our bags, to our products?
Yeah, I think you're totally right that there's no guarantee. I mean, people who are using Stripe stablecoin products are not going out and buying Doge, or much less SPX 6900 or whatever. So that, like, they're playing a totally different game for a totally different reason. I do think there are positive flow through effects. At the end of the day, what that ultimately means is that there's more people with wallets, there's more assets that are on chain that can be moved. And like at the end of the day, like what was very clear, no matter what else is going to be true of Robinhood chain or Circle chain or whatever, is that every single one of them is going to be open to bridging and interoperability with any other chain, which means that anything that is available, like the existence of this capital here, affects capital over here, right? It's kind of like, look, if Trump is trying to get all these people to invest in the U.S., and it's like, okay, but invest in the U.S. means what exactly? It means like go invest in Intel, go invest in OpenAI, and it's like, okay, how does that affect me? Sitting in Wyoming or whatever. Like I don't fucking work at Intel, so that doesn't help me. And like that's kind of true, but it's also kind of not true. Because it is always true that like as long as there is some funnel through which that capital can enter, it disseminates through the economy in just the price level, in just like the availability of capital, in like how cheap loans become. All that stuff is going to permeate because if you're on chain, you also want to borrow money. You also want to, just think about like how to get access to treasuries or yield opportunities or whatever. And that money, one way or another, through just markets, as long as markets are open, they'll find their way into like the Ethereum yields, into on-chain yields on every single chain because they're all connected to each other, right? So I think that's the obvious answer. There's probably going to be a lot more non-obvious stuff. It's very difficult to anticipate how technology ends up impacting other technologies. So one example that my partner likes to give is, he's a super OG. He's been investing for a very long time, and he remembers early days of the iPhone. And in the early days of the iPhone, there were a lot of people who dismissed the iPhone in the early days. It was like, oh, okay, it's like a phone that has a browser on it. You access the internet on your phone. It's like, okay, who really wants to walk around on like a fucking browser? Like, why don't you just go home and use your browser? And that was kind of a fair question of like, what is it really going to do to have a browser on a phone? Like, even still, like, the reason why we have phones is not because we're using our browsers all the time. But it's very difficult to anticipate how, okay, I now have a phone with a browser on it, and that eventually leads to all of the taxis in New York going away, right? What are the steps that you have to follow to understand how an internet-connected phone eventually leads to like the entire taxi monopoly getting disrupted? It's like, okay, always like all the intermediate steps all on the way are really fucking hard to predict. They're really hard to predict. And so that's why, like, I always say when it comes to stuff like this is like, don't overthink it. It's a good thing to have more GDP on chain. How it manifests, we don't know. There's going to be a lot of surprising stuff that you see when businesses start bringing a lot more capital on chain.
That is an incredible analogy because I don't even know if it's possible to predict like the third order effects of what these things even mean. When you're investing in VC, how cognizant are you of predicting what the third and fourth order effects of this company or like where this meta is going? Like how much are you thinking about that versus how much are you just like, this is a sick product, the founder is based, we're investing?
I think generally you shouldn't even be trying to predict third and fourth order effects because if you just look at the track record, right? Like I've been investing in the space for a long time. I know all the big guys and the paradigms and A16Zs and whatever. And there's a sense in which we were all right because we were all betting on DeFi early, we were betting on stablecoins early, we were betting on layer ones and all this stuff. But there's also an obvious sense in which we were all completely wrong in how it was going to happen. We thought this stuff was going to happen way earlier. We thought that like, oh, it's going to be like this thing over here, and then this is going to happen, and then blah, blah, blah. And we were just like, we did not predict NFTs. We did not predict Libra. We did not predict CBDCs. We didn't predict how any of this stuff. We didn't predict FTX would then do this and collapse, and then president would come in, and then now countries are doing this, and then stablecoins are getting legalized. Didn't predict any of this stuff. And so the reality is that you really can't predict that many steps in the future. It just the chaos theory of it is just too high for you to actually be able to project that far forward. So to your point, you got to just look at the product, look at the founder, and be like, look, do I fundamentally believe in the direction of travel? It's like this person is Christopher Columbus, and they're telling me India's over there. Yeah. And look, you're a sick dude. I don't know if India's over there, but go for it, right? Yeah. That's kind of what you have to do when you're investing early stage.
CL, the cat, made this tweet today, and he was talking about a similar topic, like just how making predictions is not really a game you can get in. And he was saying, how could someone working on the steam engine like X hundred of years ago even begin to conceptualize what photon is in pump fun? Like it isn't even in your worldview, which is, I like that take. Okay, I'll let you go at the top of 30. I got like two final questions for you. The first one I think is important is that there's a lot of people that watch the stream, and there's a lot of people in crypto, the new entrants that basically showed up in 2024, and all they know is Solana meme coins. And there is all of this macro tide shifts happening, and crypto is in this incredible place. And I don't think a lot of people really understand what's happening because the meme coin at 5 mil on the 5-minute chart is like down, and people are missing the forest for the trees. Like, can you do your best high level to like articulate how monumental the macro shifts and institutional adoption of what's happened with crypto in like 2025 and 2024, just how important it is and how much different it is from like where we were last cycle, 2 cycles ago?
Yeah. So look, I mean, crypto was in hibernation over 2023 and 2024. And in many ways, that's why the meme coin economy took off, was because there was just such a power vacuum, right? Like the big meta narratives about crypto. Like if you go back to the beginning, what was Bitcoin originally about? It was about replacing sovereign money. That was the story. That was the fucking TAM. What is the TAM of that? It's bigger than anybody can contemplate. And we're already seeing now, like Bitcoin is more valuable than some of the most valuable companies in the world. People now see that story. The second big story that's really obvious is stablecoins. Is just that permissionless finance is the idea that like what is the one thing that everybody hates more than anything else, any other company? Like the rock bottom of what users, what like people actually trust is banks. People fucking hate their banks. They hate them everywhere in the world. They hate them in America. They hate them even more in emerging economies. And the simple answer of like what all this stuff like DeFi and on-chain smart contracts and blah 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 ICOs, what was all this created to displace? The answer is banks. The answer is finance. That's what all the shit is fundamentally about. Even meme coins themselves are like essentially a financial function that's been automated and deployed at scale to be extremely fast. So I think that if you zoom out, that's the big story, right? The internet disrupted almost every single industry on earth that it touched, right? Nothing is the same after the internet except for finance. Finance is the only thing that basically, you know, like your bank, now you can like visit your bank account on your phone, you know, but like if anything ever goes wrong, you have to go into your bank branch or like, you know, call a human being or whatever. And like actually taking money and making it internet native, making it actually just bits and bytes and totally open source and programmable and remixable the way that all of this stuff is, that is what's fundamentally new. And it was always going to win. It was just a matter of how is it going to win and what are the battles that it has to fight to actually claim that victory. Those battles have now been basically won. And now is the installation phase. So that's the best like 1,000-foot view story.
I love how you articulated it. If you have 1 minute, I want to sneak one more in there is
all right, one more.
Prediction markets right now is like the most talked about topic, I think, or narrative being pushed on crypto Twitter. I asked my chat though, how many of you have traded on prediction market? It's probably 90-10 no to yes. Is this narrative real? Like, are prediction markets really going to be, do you think, the next big thing that's going to be funded, that's going to be used, that's going to have activity on in crypto adjacent finance?
Well, I think you can see already, like, I think Polymarket, if I'm not mistaken, they have like 60% the monthly visitors of Coinbase.
Whoa.
Polymarket's fucking massive. It is absolutely massive. I should also disclose that we're investors in Polymarket. Polymarket is absolutely huge. Now, the difference with prediction markets, and this is one of the features of them, is that you don't have to actually be a bettor to be a user, right? Because most people are just looking at the odds and using that as information to decide like, oh, this is the likelihood that who wins the New York mayoral election or who wins the presidency, right? If you look at the presidential election, it was one of the most viewed sites in the world on the day of the presidential election. Like literally Trump's team was looking at the prediction markets because they didn't trust what was coming out of the polls, which they were correct not to because the prediction markets were more accurate than the polls were. So at the end of the day, like we already have markets on many of the most important questions in the world, right? I mean, today, like why are markets rallying? The answer is because of interest rates. Right? If you go look at the CME, you will see that is the reason why markets are rallying is because of interest rate markets. So we already have betting markets, basically prediction markets, on many of the most important things, but not all the most important things, right? One of the most important things in the world, I mean, you were mentioning this sort of nihilism and collapse of trust. A lot of that collapse in trust is in the media, right? I remember just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the US dropping bombs on Iran. Yep. And there was a big question, is the US going to declare war on Iran? And if it does, then we're basically going into what, World War III? Like, what is that actually going to mean? And so markets were very, very on edge, but not just markets, people in their lives were very, very on edge of like, you know, I've relatives who are in the Middle East and they're just like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like literally that we might be going to war in short order. And you go to the news and what do you see in the news? You just see, oh yes, it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen. They just find people who will say whatever in order to get clicks, right? And the real question you want to know is, what is the actual likelihood that it will happen? And nobody in the media will tell you that. No fucking newspaper will ever tell you that because if they did, you wouldn't click on every fucking story. Yeah. So like Polymarket will just tell you there's 15% odds that we actually go to war. And if that's what the confluence of every, like in a sense, it's the most important question in the world. But you're only through prediction markets are you actually allowed to get the answer and surface it to people. That is why I think prediction markets are so big, is that most people who are users of prediction markets, they don't actually bet, and that's okay.
You don't have to be betting to be a user is like such a beautiful take. And I guess by that, I'm definitely a user, daily user of prediction markets.
Yeah, same. I don't bet that often, but I check Polymarket almost all the time.
That is incredible take. Also, GG on that investment. Haseeb, you're awesome, man. I'm genuinely, I appreciate all the content you put out, by the way, because there's just not that many places to get the style and the knowledge base that you have in public. So it's always a pleasure. I appreciate all you do, and thanks
you,
for the
man.
time, man. It was a fucking banger.
Well, same right back at you. You do great work. Great to be on.
Thank you, man. Have a good one, brother.
Take it easy, man.
Peace.